Welcome back into the Rip City Drive. Chris Burkhardt here, filling in for Chad Doing today. You can join the conversation. Just grab your phone, 503-248-0620, or text us at 88528. Send us your thoughts. We'll get them on the show. But now it's time to talk a little Ducks. We're joined now by friend of the show, Joel Gunderson. Now that he knows who's texting him, because when I texted him this morning and asked if he wanted to join the show, he's like, I don't have this number saved. I don't know why you deleted me, Joel.
I don't think I deleted. I'm going to go ahead and claim technological ignorance.
Hey,
but I'm glad you clarified.
That's good. That's good. And thanks for taking the time. Let's just get right to it. Going into Husky Stadium, hostile territory. And yes, the score wasn't like a massive blowout or a barn burner 26-14 final score, but a game where Oregon really felt like they handled that game all night long.
Yeah, and in reality, when you're losing or not playing with your top two wide receivers, it really does alter the way a good defense is going to play you. And Washington has a good defense; they've had a good defense all year long. Oregon scored more points than Ohio State did up in Husky Stadium. So, the reality is that Oregon was facing an 8 and 9 man box all game, so they weren't going to be able to run the ball real effectively. And then you have two guys in Benson and McClellan that stepped up big time. Kenyon Sadiq played one of his worst games of the year. I mean, he had a couple drops and just didn't look to quite be himself. But you're relying on guys that at the beginning of the season, and Jamari Johnson, McClellan, Benson, that outside of the HDC, people didn't really know what they were going to be able to bring to the team. And if you told Oregon fans at the beginning of the season that those three guys would be your leading wide receivers in the 12th game of the year up at Husky Stadium, you'd probably be pretty nervous. And you're right. The reality is, Oregon's a play or two, a correct called catch by the referee away from that game and score looking a lot more realistic to what it was, because Oregon really was in control. And it got scary there a little bit in the fourth quarter when you look like you might be giving Washington the ball back, only up 5 at that point. You never quite know where it's going to go. But the reality is Oregon was the better team. They showed it on Saturday in a game that they didn't play that well, just how much better they are from a talent standpoint overall.
Yeah, and I was watching back through the highlights, just getting the quick version of the game, and you watch that game, and the big passing plays that like Oregon had, Dante Moore was finding the open guy on a clean route. They were beating their defense, and I know Oregon fan and how social media is like, oh, our defense is getting burned on some of those plays. You go back and watch it. I don't necessarily think the defensive backfield played terrible. A lot of those weird plays where Jed Fish was calling nothing but crossing routes. And I'm not saying getting away with pick plays, but they were about as close to pick plays as you can get and get away with them, which was freeing up a few guys. But I still thought the defense played incredible, all things considered.
They did. And, statistically speaking, it was Damon Williams, one of his worst games of the season, if not the worst. He was below 50% passing. I think the one thing as an Oregon fan you look on, you'd be a little bit concerned about is, Muhammad ran the ball pretty much wherever he wanted. And that running game for Washington really stepped up. But again, Oregon played, they played mostly in dime the whole game. They're like, you're going to run the ball. That's fine. We are not going to sit back here and let Damon Williams pick us apart. Or, then they had a spy and Dylan Thieneman on him all game. So the running game was basically like, we're going to let you run. That's fine. You'd like to see a little bit more stout up front, but from your front four. But overall, there's not much to pick on. And if you're going to pick on anything, I certainly wouldn't point to the defense first. I mean, that's, again, Jed Fish is an offensive guy. That's a good team. That's a good offense. And Oregon held them to 14 points in a rivalry game, whereas we saw across the country, these games are all closer than you expect. And, Alabama is a much better team than Auburn, barely won on the road. So these types of things happen, and any kind of game like that, you walk away. Now you've got 3 weeks more than likely to get ready. If not, barring something weird, you might have 4.5 weeks or something, but you have at least 3 weeks to get healthy, get set up, know who your opponent's going to be in game plan. And I don't think there's a whole lot to pick on coming out of Saturday.
Joel Gunderson joining us here. And Joel, I want to know, where does this season rank, not on just Dan Lanning's, but just overall the last, decade or so of Oregon football? Because for me, I know last year you run the gauntlet, you go undefeated into the playoff. Yes, you lose that game against Ohio State. But this year, I think this might be Dan Lanning's most impressive work, especially when what you talk about with the wide receivers. When you lose that much talent on the depth chart, and your quarterback still finds a way to sling that ball and move the offense. I mean, that is some impressive work from not only the depth, the young guys, and the coaching staff, just everybody involved. So, where does this season rank overall to you?
Oh, I think it absolutely is his best job. And the biggest thing is you mentioned it's the youth, and that was a big question mark coming into the season. I mean, look, you bring in Canada and Thieneman who are seniors in the backfield, but you had a lot of unknowns going into that. There was not a whole lot. I mean, nothing essentially done to improve the linebacking core coming off of last year, which we all knew was going to be the weak point of that defense. And then you're replacing essentially four guys up front in Caldwell and Harmon and some other guys they lost. And to come out and have the season they did, even with the loss to Indiana, knowing that everyone kind of had an eye towards next season as really going to be the year potentially where it all comes together. And the reality is, if going into a game like Iowa or going into a game like USC in years past with the amount of guys that they did not have available, they would not have come out of those games victorious. So I also think it was one of the more enjoyable seasons. I mean, you can have seasons where you win a lot of games, but there's for some reason from just an aesthetic standpoint, it's not there. I mean, this season had everything. You had big blowouts at the beginning of the year. You had the big giant win at Penn State, which was one of the more, at the time, remember, one of the more thrilling wins in Oregon history. And then you had the setback against Indiana, but road wins at Iowa and the monsoon against Wisconsin and the big spectacle against USC. I mean, every week sort of brought a different element to it. And I think it was a lot of fun. And then when you factor in, again, looking forward, the season's not done. There's a lot to go to play for. But looking ahead to next year, there could be a whole lot more on the horizon. So I think, yeah, from a pure coaching standpoint, Lanning and this staff deserve a ton of credit because there was a lot of obstacles thrown in their way. But you also have to keep an eye on going forward because it all looks pretty exciting.
Yeah, and speaking of Lanning and his staff, I don't know if you've heard anything through your sources, but I know rumor mill is churning both Tosh Lapoy and Will Stein's names coming up in multiple jobs. Obviously, Lapoy connected to Cal. That's his alma mater. Will Stein is a Kentucky guy, and that job just opened up in his home state. So what are you hearing on that front? What are you feeling? And I mean, that's a tough task to fill those shoes if those two guys leave.
Yeah, at this point, I would be pretty surprised if Lapoy came back. I'm less certain on Stein just because it's not an alma mater. I know his dad, I believe, played there, and obviously he's from Kentucky, so there are ties. But the SEC, Kentucky is a bottom of the conference job in the SEC, and I know a lot of people say, well, that there's no expectations he can go there and do what he wants, but that's not how these guys are wired. These coaches are wired to go and win. So whether or not he views that Kentucky job as something that should take this year or maybe wait till next year, that's up to be left to be seen. I do not expect Tosh Lapoy to come back, and I don't have anything more than what's being reported. But when you have an alma mater, and the reality is Tosh Lapoy has never been looked at as a guy that screamed head coach, and there's a lot of people that kind of thought, not even his ceiling, but maybe his best role was going to be a defensive coordinator. Well, it's a little bit different when your alma mater opens up and you're coming off of 4 seasons in a row where the defense that you're leading has gotten better every single year. It would be hard to fault him for taking it. And I think it'd be a really good opportunity for him. And we have to remember, and I believe you mentioned this earlier, Dan Lanning set a precedence when he came to Oregon. He got hired and he stayed on at Georgia to coach all the way through the championship game. And it's been well documented, his relationship with Lapoy. It seems like he has a really great relationship with Stein. So even if both of those guys do take a head coaching job, I would be pretty surprised if they left before the season was over. And the reality is neither one of them are going to a school where they have to hold together a giant recruiting class. That's not really the lifeblood of either of those programs. So whether they joined December 10th or January 10th, probably not going to make a huge difference. And I think the respect they have for Lanning, again, it's different than Kiffin. They're not going to conference rivals, and they're not going to, schools that are a state away where there's a lot of hatred and stuff. So right now I put the odds at Lapoy going at pretty much like a 9 out of 10. And I think if I were to put one on Stein, it'd probably be a little bit more like 6.5 out of 10 that he would go. But I would expect both of them to be at Oregon through the duration of the playoffs.
Yeah, and to your point, those relationships that you have with your assistants, they absolutely matter. I mean, you see Oregon State's going to have their introductory press conference tomorrow for Jamarcus Shepard, who's their new head coach. He's currently the wide receiver coach at Alabama and believe he's going to be staying on through their SEC championship game and whatever happens in the playoff too, because he has a great relationship with Kalen DeBoer going back to their time at Washington. So I'm right there with you. As well. And the other thing, too, is I know fans were like, oh, no, you're going to lose this guy. You're going to lose that guy. Look at all the great coaches. And I really believe Dan Lanning is one. And I hope he continues to solidify that. But the Sabans, the Kirby Smarts, they all have massive coaching trees, man, of guys who've come and gone and got those opportunities. And when your coordinator gets an opportunity, it says just as much about your head coach as it does your coordinator skills, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the reality is for a lot of these, real 4 or 5 star kids that Oregon targets mainly, losing a position coach is actually more harmful than losing a coordinator, because the coordinators are, they're overseeing they're recruiting the entire offense, for example. So, with Stein, a guy like Beavers, the quarterback that they have committed, that's probably one that he has a closer relationship with Stein than other kids. But for the most part, Ross Douglas is recruiting the wide receivers, and Rashad Samples is recruiting the running backs, and then Lanning jumps in, and then Stein would jump in. But, the hierarchy with these big time kids that you don't want to lose, it's the position coach, it's Lanning, and then it's the coordinator. So, you have a Tank Jones that's committed from Alabama that they're hoping to sign on Wednesday. If Tosh Lupoi leaves on Tuesday, is it going to, ultimately affect what Jones does? Who knows? But you have to assume with guys like that Lanning is just as involved, if not more, than Lupoi has been in recruitments like that. I mean, that's where you see coaches jump in for those top 2 or 3 or 4 kids in a class. You always hear like, oh, that's a head coach's guy. Like they're making sure, because they know that any given season you could lose a coach, you could lose a coordinator. They don't want to be left high and dry. So those big time recruits that you're looking for, the coach is involved in that. And trust me, they're having conversations. Lanning's having conversations with Lupoi, and then he's having conversations with these recruits. And if it is that Lupoi's leaving, he can say, hey, we got it under control. Here's our plan. Here's where we're going to go next. So they've got a contingency plan for all this. And you hate to see it happen so close to signing day, which is Wednesday, but that's the calendar we're in. And everybody knows the college football calendar is terrible. Everyone's got to deal with it. So it's about who does it and handles it best. And one thing we learned with Lanning is, as far as prepping and planning out things, there are a few better in the country.
Absolutely. And Joel Gunderson joining us here on the Rip City Drive. And Joel, I guess the next question for you is, the Ducks not playing in a championship game, but plenty of other teams are. So are we rooting for like Georgia and Texas Tech? Or are we rooting for Alabama, BYU, the chance to either have a bye week or host a playoff game? What's your feeling? I know I want to see a playoff game in Autzen myself, and I don't want to get done in by the bye week like all 4 teams were last year.
Yeah, I think this year is a little bit different in terms of the bye, and I think obviously as Oregon has pretty bad PTSD from the way it went last year. But the reality is, most times you're not going to play a 2-loss Ohio State team, which was still the most talented team in the country. So, barring something unforeseen like that, to me, there's really no harm in if you do creep up to 4 and get a bye, because this team is banged up. And if they had an extra 10 days or so to get those wide receivers and offensive linemen back, and then just let everyone else keep the healing up, as long as you're not entering the Rose Bowl playing in Ohio State, you're probably going to be okay. And they wouldn't be in that case. So, yes, you want to see a home game at Autzen. It would be, from a spectacle standpoint, it'd be great. But I also look at it this way: if you're going to give up a game against Tulane at home, it's not exactly a draw. I mean, people are going to flood there to be there for the playoff game, but you're not going to see Tulane. At that point, there are just as many good benefits that come with a bye this year. Not being the 1 seed getting a bye, but getting the 4 seed getting a bye, you're going to have an easier route. You're not going to be playing Ohio State in the first game that you're playing. You're going to be playing someone of probably equal or lesser talent than you are. So at that point, it's all about matchups, and it could be any number of teams that they would play, but it's the matchups this year especially are more important to me than the bye or not having the bye. And I think that's something that Oregon learned from last year. That's the other thing too. They would not enter a bowl game after 31 or 32 days off flat-footed like they were last year, because that's set with them all season long.
Absolutely. That's why I have you on here, to talk guys like me who have that PTSD off the ledge a little bit. So thank you. Hey, last question for you before I let you go. And that is there anybody in the country better at burning every bridge possible than Lane Kiffin?
But it's everyone deserves blame on this. the reality is, if Lane had the option of the LSU job coming open after the season and taking it, he probably would want that. I don't think these guys actually want to just leave it all burning behind them. You don't get to where you're at. You don't build relationships with players by being that way. And it sucks that it is that way. Could he have handled it better? Absolutely. Did he handle it about as bad as you can? Absolutely. But everyone there is sort of the victim of the calendar. Like I said earlier, it's just not set up the way it needs to be. And with these schools now willing to swallow 50, 60 million a year in buyout, now it's the arms race of who we're going to fire our coach first. So we have a longer leash to go. It's also not these guys' fault that their name gets thrown out there immediately. It's the agent's fault. It's ESPN's fault. So Lane takes a lot of blame, and he should. But also, they could be set up to where these coaches wouldn't be in that situation to have to do it. So it goes all the way around, but his track record, certainly not great at it.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens there with Ole Miss and LSU. And I mean, he's got 3 teams in the SEC that he's wore their cap now. I'm only a matter of time before he wears number 4. You never know. College football, the drama is beautiful. The game is beautiful. Your coverage is beautiful. Joel, thanks for joining us today, man. I appreciate it.
Sounds good, Freddie. Thank you.
Yeah, that was Joel Gunderson. He's the best. Good insight, and I'm not even joking. Talk me off the ledge, my man. Like I am that guy. Like the last year, the PTSD of the bye, it's a real thing. But he makes a good point there. It's all about matchups, and I got to go back to something I've said before that for some reason doesn't impact the way I think about the playoff. But last year, you entered that playoff with Ohio State and as an absolute buzzsaw. I think everybody knew they were the best team, that they were playing incredible football. They were ready to go. This year, it feels like it's wide open. Any of those 12 teams can win. Now, I know people are going to be like, I don't know, Chris. Tulane's not going to really make a championship run. But that's not necessarily my point. My point is there's not a team that just feels like the clear-cut favorite. Now, if Indiana goes in and wallops Ohio State or vice versa, maybe they enter as the favorite, but I still feel like they can be tripped up depending on who they play. So that matters. And another great point Joel made was the banged up players. If you get that break and that allows guys like DeCorian Moore to get back healthy and you get your receivers back, that's huge. That is huge moving forward. So, yeah, maybe now I'm rooting for Alabama and BYU. Of course, I'll always root for BYU because I like Kalani Sitake. That guy's awesome. All right, we're going to take a quick little break here. Plenty of more sports coverage coming up. Brendan Slaughter is going to join us at 4:20. Put our focus on the Oregon State Beavers, talk about their new head coach and where they go from here. All that and more coming up on the Rip City Drive here on your home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. Welcome back into the Rip City Drive. Chris Burkhardt here with you, filling in for Chad Doing today. You can follow me on social at Chris J. Burkhardt. You can also join the conversation with us today. 503-248-0620 is a telephone number. And of course, you can hit us up on the new Rip City Radio text line. Just text 88528. Save it under "Where's Chad at?" and you'll know exactly who you're texting. You're texting Chris Burkhardt here on the Rip City Drive. Shout out once again to Joel Gunderson for joining the show. Some good insight, some good content, and yeah, he's absolutely right. The idea that the playoff is wide open this year is a real thing, and the matchups are going to matter. And getting healthy, I think, is crucial at this juncture. If you are the Oregon Ducks. So we'll see what happens in the playoffs and in the championship games. What happens in those games is absolutely going to have a massive impact on the college football playoff rankings. You got number 11 BYU taking on number 5 Texas Tech. You got Tulane and North Texas. Tulane looking to keep their hopes of getting that G5 berth. Alabama at Georgia, which is going to be a big time game because, again, Georgia wins. They're locked in the top 4. Alabama wins. It's going to mess up the top 4 rankings and it's going to give Oregon a chance. And Ohio State and Indiana. That's a big one. I don't think the loser of that game falls out of the top 4, not at all, but it's still going to move some things around. And then, of course, all eyes on Duke and Virginia. And that's a big time game. Miami not getting in that absolutely impacts the college football playoff standings because you're not going to have a top ACC champion. Miami is currently ranked 12th. That's where in that matchup you have number 18 Virginia and unranked Duke. Now, if Duke at 7-5 unranked wins that game, that has a chance to flip the entire college football playoffs on its head. And those teams right there on the edge that are on the outside looking in, those are the teams that are really going to suffer. Does a Texas get in at that point? Does a BYU get in if they lose to Texas Tech? Like little things like that. So there's so much to watch on championship weekend here, and it's going to impact just about everybody. Now, if things go chalk, which would be Texas Tech winning, Georgia winning, Ohio State winning, and Virginia winning, it's not going to have as much of an impact. Miami not making that ACC game, though, that's gonna be the real one because what could happen? Miami currently sitting there at 12th. If Duke wins that game and BYU beats Texas Tech and Alabama beats Georgia, then you have the situation where you start considering, wow, does Miami get left out? Because they're right there on the edge, and it just changes everything. So this is what we asked for, and this is great. Like it's the college football playoff, the ability for everything to be flipped on its head just at any moment. It's not the BCS where you lose one game, and your entire season is over. You have a chance to rebound, bounce back, and get where you need to go. But this is going to be real interesting to see how this plays out in the end. Because boy howdy. Now I know people were talking about the tiebreakers and how they work and who gets into the championship game. Some people wanted them, the ACC, that is, just remove your tiebreakers, put Miami in. Miami is the best team in that conference. And the thing is, I don't think there's any doubting that Miami is the best team in that conference. But the standings bore out. Virginia had a 7-1 conference record, and then SMU, Miami, Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, and Duke all at 6-2. And the way the tiebreakers worked, Duke comes out on top. So crazy how that all works, and it's going to be an absolute crazy championship weekend as we try to figure out who makes it to the college football playoff. And I think as this continues to go on, 12 teams is great. I think there's probably a push for 16. Some people like more. I mean, the subdivision there, the North Dakotas and the Montana states, like they do like a 24 team playoff, and it's worked forever. But this is the big boys. This is the Power 5 conferences, and they're going to want to expand it because that's more money, more opportunities, more home games, all that. I just love it because I'm a college football junkie. I like the NFL too, but give me one. Do you want to watch Duck football for the rest of your life or 49er football? Those are my two favorite teams. I'm taking the Ducks because I love college football. And this playoff has made it just even that much more entertaining. So is the coaching carousel. I mean, coaches getting fired and taking new jobs and moving around left and right. We talked about it with Joel a second ago. Lane Kiffin leaving Old Miss to go to LSU, and some people might say it's a lateral move. It is. I mean, it is weird to me. I know you got the fan base and you got the boosters and you got the history with LSU, but at the same time, you got Ole Miss going to the college football playoff. Man, you got a chance to win a championship, and now he doesn't even get to coach the team in it. They said, "No way, Jose, you can't do that." And now that just changes everything about Old Miss's trajectory, and that hurts them, and that's not good. You got Michigan State, who 2 years into the Jonathan Smith era said, "Get out of here. You're not cutting it." He hasn't been good in conference play, and they're leaning on a guy who has a pretty good record there at Northwestern and been out of the coaching game for just a minute. But Pat Fitzgerald going to come in and go to Michigan State. And that's big. That's big. Tulane's head coach going to Florida. James Madison's head coach Chesney, he's going to UCLA. The coaching carousel's moving around. James Franklin already making an impact at Virginia Tech, getting some high level prospects to flip their commitment from Penn State to Virginia Tech. For Penn State still looking to fill that void left by James Franklin, and rumor mill starting today that there may be interest between Penn State and Kalani Sitake, who's done an absolute phenomenal job at BYU. So the wheels are moving, and we're going to see where this all falls at the end of the day. Kind of like Joel said, doesn't really see Will Stein leaving. He is born in Kentucky. He's a Louisville guy, but that Kentucky Cal just opened up, so a chance to go back to your home state that has some power to it. Tosh Lapoy is a Cal Golden Bear. That job's opened up. But Nick Rolovich did do a pretty good job on the interim after Wilcox was fired. So just still a lot to sort out all the way. And again, it's college football. I love this game. I love this game. All right, we're going to take a quick little break. Coming up in the next hour, joining us at 4:20, Brendan Slaughter. We're going to talk about that new hire down at Oregon State, see what the prospects are for the Beavers moving forward. I'm going to get his thoughts on all these coaching changes as well. All that and more coming up on your home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio, 620. December. Hello there, Rip City, 4 o'clock here on a beautiful December afternoon. That's right, it's December now. Get ready, Christmas is around the corner. Might have came early if you were an Oregon Duck fan, as they went to Seattle, grabbed a 26-14 victory over the Washington Huskies over the weekend. A win that all but solidifies their spot in the college football playoff. The only thing left to do is figure out what seed they're going to get. A lot on the line as these championship games go on around the country this weekend, but the Ducks are in. In Corvallis, the Beavers might not be in the playoff, but the future is looking bright as they have finally tabbed a head coach of the future as Jamarcus Shepard comes over from Alabama. He's a wide receiver coach over there. Comes from Washington as well. He's been on Kalen DeBoer's staff for a few years. And in LSU, they get Lane Kiffin from Ole Miss, shaking up the college football world. Hour 2 of the drive starts now. Good afternoon, Rip City. Chris Burkhardt here with you on the Rip City Man Chat doing today. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can follow me on social at Chris J. Burkhardt. You can dial the phone lines 503-248-0620. Go to youtube.com, type in Rip City Radio, all sorts of ways, including the brand new Rip City Radio text line. Just grab your phone and text us at 88528, and we'll get your texts on the show there. Plenty of college football talk today. It was a wonderful weekend in college football, especially if you're a Duck fan. And even though the result on the field wasn't great, as the Cougars got some revenge and took down the Beavers in Pullman, I think it was still a pretty good weekend to be a Beaver, as they have announced the hiring of Jamarcus Shepard as their new head coach. We're going to get the details on that here in about 20 minutes when super producer, Beaver insider, and Blazer show host here for Rip City Radio, Brendan Slaughter, joins the show. Going to be fun. I think it's a good hire. I want to get some more info on it. And of course, tomorrow he will have his introductory press conference at noon, I believe it is, according to Michael Shacker. And you can listen to that live here on Rip City Radio. Now, let's take a look at some other sports action that went down over the weekend, because it wasn't just college football taking the stand. The NFL had a fun Sunday of action, especially with that capper last night between the Broncos and the Commanders. Marcus Mariota turning back the clock, playing like his Heisman self, all until that final pass of the game that the Denver defense knocked down. I applaud the Commanders. I loved that call. Don't play for a tie. You're going to score a touchdown in overtime. Go for two. Go for the win, especially when you're a 3-8 ball club at that point in time. Nothing to lose. Go for it. They did not get it. The Broncos escape their 9th straight victory. They improved to 10-2 on the season. The Commanders fall to 3-9. Marcus Mariota was the leading rusher for the Commanders, 10 carries, 55 yards. Bo Nix, a pretty impressive game, which is funny because Chad showed me the highlight where he's running out of the pocket. He gets tripped up. He starts falling. His knee almost hits the ground. He throws the ball. He gets a touchdown. I'm like, oh, I thought only Pat Mahomes could do that. I thought he was the only quarterback who could do that, according to the social medias and the way talking heads talk about him. I thought no other quarterback could do that. Only Pat Mahomes could do like the sidearm falling down throw and make SportsCenter's top 10. They're like that. That must have been Pat Mahomes in a Broncos jersey, because Bo Nix can't do that. That's what I'm to believe, according to how we all love Pat Mahomes. So kudos to Bo Nix pulling out the bag. Of course, it does hurt when you get a little Oregon Duck on Oregon Duck crime, but man, still nice to see so many Oregon quarterbacks thriving. And unfortunately, Dylan Gabriel no longer one of them, because the Browns have turned to the Shadur Sanders experiment. But Justin Herbert had himself a game, and the Chargers won, beat the Raiders 31-14. The Raiders are struggling. I don't think Chip Kelly was the problem. They fired him anyway, and they are still 2-10 on the season. The offense couldn't move the ball, so maybe it wasn't the offensive coordinator's problem. Maybe it's the fact that as fun as he is and as good as the story is, Geno Smith just ain't it, and the offensive line is meh. They got a lot of work to do. The Bills, though, they got a win over the Steelers. They improved to 8-4 on the season. The Seahawks, I think they've had a heck of an impressive year, 9-3 with a 36-0 victory over the Vikings. Defense leading the way there. Panthers 31-28 over the Rams. So you're starting to see things shake out here. I didn't think the Rams were going to lose that game, but the Panthers, who have look at that roster and you're like, oh, Bryce Young and the things that they've gone through, like they're going to struggle. They're not going to be. They've started to find their way. They've taken some losses. It's been a win loss over the last few weeks, but picking up a win against the Rams is huge. They lost to the 49ers. They did get a good win over the Falcons. They beat the Packers, so things are looking up there. They lost to the Saints a few weeks ago. They had a chance to get some revenge coming up in 2 weeks against the Saints. So that's going to be big for the Panthers as things start to shake out. Football is so weird because we talked about loving college football versus the NFL. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, the Ducks, they didn't lose to Washington, so they're locked in. If they would have lost that game to Washington, it would have been a much different story because they would have had 2 losses. They would have dropped to like a 60% chance of getting into the playoff because they had 2 losses. Like, you got to win their games. Meanwhile, you go to the NFL, and right now in the AFC North, yeah, they're led by the 6-6 Baltimore Ravens, right? Oh, the AFC South, the 8-4 Jacksonville Jaguars, right? The NFC East, they're led by the 8-4 Philadelphia Eagles. NFC South, the 7-5 Tampa Bay Bucks. Carolina all of a sudden sniffing a chance of making the playoffs. So the NFL is crazy. That is the talent gap. It ain't there. The worst team on your roster is still probably better than the best player on most college football rosters. Like, that's just how crazy it is. And it is kind of fun though. You don't have to win every single game. You just gotta get out there and find your footing. Speaking of some of those games, the Buccaneers got a win over the Cardinals. The Jets actually won a game. The 3-9 Jets over the 4-8 Falcons. The Dolphins shocked the world and beat the beat the Saints. I say that in jest. Both those teams are terrible. Texans beat the Colts. Shout out to Daniel Jones trying to play through a busted leg. He's limping through it, but he's finding a way. The Jaguars beat the Titans, who have been terrible this year. They fall to 1-11. That's not good. And then the 49ers, they took care of action, beating the Browns. That's the end of my spoiler alerts, Shacker. You can unplug your ears now. He knew where I was going. I started talking football, doing the rundown. He's like, plug those ears. He's like a little kid, like, la 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 la, fingers, la la la. They're in the ear. He can't hear. Or old, was it old school, right? Vince Vaughn's character. Every time he wants to like use a profanity or say something dumb, he looks at his kids like earmuffs. Like, that's what we need to start doing. I apologize. Earmuffs, Shacker. Earmuffs.
Yeah. Yesterday during the Oklahoma City Thunder broadcast where I have the headphones on listening to their broadcaster, every time they talked NFL, I just took the headphones off because I just didn't want to hear it.
Hey, you've only told me explicitly that I can't give any Survivor Series War Games spoilers because you didn't get a chance to catch up on your WWE news.
Yeah, it looked like a really good setup outside down at San Diego.
Right? Petco Park.
Yeah, it should. I think Survivor Series needs to go 2 nights, like all the other major events.
I hate the 2-night thing, man. One night it. I get it. I get that they're selling tickets and money will always speak loud. But I remember back in the day when WrestleMania used to be the only big stadium show. In fact, it wasn't until like WrestleMania like 13 or 14 that wasn't in an arena. How many of WrestleManias were at Madison Square Garden, right? They're filling up these basketball arenas. Now they're doing these stadium shows for every single premium live event. Can we go back to pay-per-view? Pay-per-view just sounded
Sky
so
Dome
much
had
cooler.
Hulk Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior in Toronto.
Look at that.
That was a stadium.
Good pull. Good pull. Well, I guess WrestleMania also, classic Pontiac Silverdome, right? Like they've done that, but like WrestleMania, let's see. WrestleMania 12s and the 11s. I'm trying to think the Iron Man match, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart. That was in a stadium. I mean, come on.
Yeah, Hogan
that was in an
Slaughter couldn't
arena.
sell out a stadium, so they had to go back to arena.
But it is crazy. Now the Royal Rumble, Survivor Series, SummerSlam, and WrestleMania are all in fat stadiums. It did look cool though. It did look cool. The only bad part, man, is as cool as WWE is, old TKO merger. Now they're going the UFC price points. And have you ever seen a UFC ticket? No, because you can't afford it. And now you're getting to the point where you can't afford a WWE ticket either. AEW for the win. It's kind of annoying. Like I would love to go to WrestleMania. The WrestleMania tickets, I'm like, guess I'm never going to WrestleMania. I should have gone when I was 10. I mean, my allowance money could have paid for a ticket back then. Now I work two jobs and can't afford a WrestleMania standing room only nosebleed seat.
Scalpers were selling WrestleMania tickets in Seattle in '03 for $20.
That's what I'm talking about. Last year in Las Vegas, like just to get in and have the highest seat in the Allegiant Stadium was like $400 for nosebleed top row. I want to be able to see the ring, not watch it on the video the whole time. Man. And then, but you know, you gotta price the people out. You gotta price the people out of ringside so that you can do all the beauty shots to show all the celebrities who could afford the $3,000 ringside seats. And they're probably more than that. Kind of crazy. So yeah, no spoilers for you, mainly because I didn't watch it. So I do know what happened because I get my wrestling news in doses. But no, didn't watch the full thing. I was too busy watching college football, watching some NFL, and recovering from an awesome weekend of OSAA state championships, man. Lake Oswego took care of business, beat Central Catholic in the 6A game. Silverton and Summit in the 5A championship at Hillsborough Stadium was a defensive slugfest. And then all of a sudden, offenses started scoring in the fourth quarter. Silverton comes out, gets a victory. I believe Cascade wins the 4A championship, first championship for them since 2015. So that was fun. Cascade Christian goes in and takes down Burns, which was a good game. I think a lot of people thought Cascade Christian was going to run away with it, but Burns kept that thing close. It was just a knockout, drag out game. Adrian wins. That's a fun one. Adrian, you know that in this state, and I work for the OSA, so of course I know. But we have 1A has 6-man football. 6-man football. I mean, what a game it is. They shrink the field down so it's not as wide. You rumble, bumble, stumble. You get some games and you get some wins. It's kind of a fun game that they have over there. So yeah, shout out to all of our champions this weekend. It was a fun time. I was down at Summit High School where by the end of it, I couldn't feel my fingers because it was so cold out, and I'm over there trying to do our social media, and I'm trying to send an Instagram post. And I'm like, yeah, this is unfortunate because I can't feel my fingers and I am typing every other word incorrectly because I can't see, I cannot function. My hand is shaking, my fingers hurt, but we got through it, and it was a heck of a weekend. So shout out to everyone who got to play for a championship this weekend. It's pretty cool when you watch what happened and see those guys grab the title, get Big Blue, and so it wasn't just college football and NFL. There was a lot of college or high school football in there as well. Of course, I didn't mention that in the 2A game, Lost River beat Hepner. That was also a pretty good game, 24-22. Adrian won 1-man 8, and in the 1A6 game, Harper Charter with the most lopsided game in OSA football championship history, 81-zip. 81-zip, Harper Charter.
Can they do a double running clock, like a double speed?
Hey, clock starts running at 35. So, hey, it was it's that 1-man 6. That was or 1A 6-man though. 6A or 6-man football can have some high scoring games just because it's just six. There are only 6 guys on the field for each team. It's a little easier to run when you need to get out there. It's a whole different ball game though. Again, shout out to everyone who brought home a championship. All right, we're gonna take a quick little break here on the River City Drive. When we come back, Brendan Slaughter is going to join the show. I'm going to ask him about new head coach down there in Corvallis, Jamarcus Shepard. What is he hearing? Well, hopefully, thought process going into this, the future of the team. And I hopefully get a chance to talk to Coach Shepard in the coming days as well, because I think a lot of Beaver fans want to know, what are they getting? What are they getting? Like when Dan Lanning was hired at Oregon, people knew defensive coordinator, Georgia, we're getting a defensive guy. What is Jamarcus Shepard? Wide receiver coach? Is he going to be a big offensive guy, big recruiter, things like that? It's going to be fun times there at Corvallis. I like the hire. They thought outside the box, and I think that's a good thing. Brendan Slaughter coming up next to talk about it on the home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. Threw me off. I thought that was the phone. Like, hello, this is Brendan Slaughter. But it wasn't. But guess what? It kind of is. Because he's going to join us right now. He is the Beavers reporter for Beavers Edge. He's basically our Beavers insider as well. And Brendan, nothing to report. Not a lot of news coming down the pipe for you. Hasn't been busy at all over there at Beavers Edge, has it?
Oh, Chris, I hope you had a good Thanksgiving, man. The last time I saw you was Wednesday night at Moda, and I can tell you how crazy it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday. One of the first years where I was like, "Oh, got some breaking news on Thanksgiving. Got to put down the plate and go grab the laptop." But no, it's been great to have some exciting times, just with some new energy from Jamarcus Shepard. Obviously, his introductory press conference is tomorrow, but he arrived in Corvallis today. There's already palpable excitement and yeah, it's a great time over at beaversedge.com. We're definitely looking ahead to 2026 with great vision.
Well, yes, if you haven't already, make sure you're over there. You subscribe to their newsletters and get what's going on because Brendan does a great job covering the Beavers down there. And I just want to know, first off, because I know you're a fan too, and that's kind of why you went to Oregon State, and that's why you started all this and you cover the team so well. But just what was your initial reaction? I know you and I had talked on the fifth quarter about, maybe thoughts of Jonathan Smith if he got fired, which is funny enough. He got fired shortly after the news of this hire broke.
Yep.
But we were talking about Wilcox, and obviously Jim Morrow ended up going to Colorado State. So you were starting to see names kind of fall off the board. And the more you thought about it, the more it pointed to Shepard. But then it's still kind of shocking when you hear the news. But so what was your initial reaction to the hire?
Yeah, I think excitement, first of all. I mean, throughout the process, Chris, and, you and I had kind of talked about it. We talked about what Chad doing, great times as far as, just getting through all these candidates and kind of seeing the pros and the cons. And, the few times I talked to you guys, throughout this year, this process, I should say, Jamarcus Shepard's name had just come up the most, and kind of being the loudest in the process. You mentioned we heard scuttle on plenty of other candidates. There were, a couple others maybe in the finals, but this was the guy who wanted the job, and he was, outward with wanting the job. And it kind of, it resonated in a way of a guy who has kind of unmatched energy. I think as far as, you look at any of the videos on social media of how he hypes up his team, the energy he's going to bring is probably the most energetic and most of a rah coach that Oregon State has maybe had in my lifetime, Chris. I mean, it's like when you think about it, like this is a guy who knows how to relate to players extremely well. He's an ace recruiter. I like the offensive minds that he's coached with, whether that's Mike Leach, Willie Taggart, Jeff Brom, and then most recently Kalen DeBoer. It's a strong coaching tree. I also like grabbing somebody from a really good program in Alabama and somebody who has, the connections to what we would consider an elite football culture. And nothing's official yet, but we're hearing some strong indications. There could be a few staffers that follow him over from Alabama too, which I think would be exciting. Maybe even a couple players. You never know as far as, that kind of thing goes. So I think there's just a lot of optimism moving forward, and it was badly needed, Chris. I mean, this was a rough 2-10 year for not only the, coaches and fans, but the players alike. And I'll even say for the media, us as well. And I think just a reset was needed, and to reset with a guy who has this much kind of energy and pizzazz, I'm excited for him. I'm really looking forward to that press conference tomorrow.
And I mean, you kind of mentioned it there too, but like as an Oregon State fan, when my argument, Brendan, to you over the last few years is that Oregon State needs to think outside the box. Don't go where you're comfortable. As good as Jonathan Smith was, and it was the right hire at the time, but it's like you went comfort, the former player, the guy who knows Oregon State. You replaced him with Trent Bray, the former player, the guy who knows Oregon State. And I said to you a long time that you had to think outside the box and go get someone, maybe no ties to university, maybe a first-time coach or a coach with a ton of experience who would do good. Like I was a guy who was in favor of Nick Rolovich. But the point I'm getting at is I don't think anyone thought that Oregon State had the ability to go in and pluck a guy from an SEC staff. I think that means something, quite honestly. Like, what does that mean to you to go in, talk to a guy who's on the Alabama coaching staff and say, hey, leave Tuscaloosa, leave the ability to play for a national championship with that staff every year and come to Corvallis? And he says, you know what? I like the sound of that.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it spot on. I mean, you talk about someone who, embraces the challenge that Oregon State faces. And I was just telling somebody this the other day. If Jamarcus Shepard is thinking the way that I think he is thinking and should be thinking, you're not why you went 2-10, Chris, this year. It was only 2 calendar years ago that you were number 11 playing number 5 Washington, and then obviously had the end of that season that didn't go well with the loss to Washington, Oregon, and then Jonathan Smith left. But literally 2 years ago, you were the number 11 team in the country near the end of November, right? So it can be done at Oregon State, and I understand the NIL landscape was a little bit different 2 years ago, and the conference was different and all those kind of things. But, say that to say you can win at Oregon State. I think it just requires a significant plan. And I go back to Jonathan Smith, like when he got hired in 2018, supposedly he had like a big old binder ready to go. And it's like, boom, this is my plan for how I want to win here. And I think, you look at the cultures Jamarcus Shepard's been around, he has that desire to be a head coach. Like he's like, hey, I want to run my own program, and I think that's something that's kind of cool too, as far as someone who has that hunger and desire to want to build something up. And there's obviously the chance that I think he could, like I said, bring over a few pieces from Alabama with him. And going back to your SEC question, I think it's awesome, right? I mean, I don't think Oregon State is as much, in the gutter as far as, where they have to come out from as maybe they were at the end of the Gary Anderson era that Jonathan Smith
It's
had
not even
to,
close.
right? So I think he has a better starting point, and it's hard to look at expectations, but I think he will get the Beavers competitive sooner than later.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brendan Slaughter, you guys know him very well, super producer here at Rip City Radio, also covers the Beavers for Beavers Edge. .com and Brandon, yeah, I think he does have the potential. You and I talked about it. I think the new look Pac-12 is going to be set up well enough that you should be able to go out there, get where you want to go, win 8 games, and then hopefully get to the spot where you're in contention. You are a Tulane or a James Madison, right? You're in
Sure.
contention for that G5 spot in the college football playoff, and so that's huge. And I guess the question, and I don't know how much you know because we're all still learning about him, and you're going to get a chance to talk to him tomorrow at the introductory press conference. By the way, Beaver fans, that will air here on Rip City Radio tomorrow at noon. So tune in. But like uh, how much was he involved? I know he's a wide receiver coach, but you look at the Washington offenses with DeBoer and him, and they were really good offenses. You look at Alabama; they've turned what Simpson into a Heisman contender. Like the offenses have been churning. So is that the type of coach you expect? A guy who can come in and get the Beaver offense to click?
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at how poor Oregon State's offense was this year, and I think, kind of looking at some of the numbers now that we can kind of reflect and look back at some of the analytics and whatnot. You look and think Oregon State's defense at times this year could have played winning football, but when you look at how much the Beavers struggled to score this year, you're talking under 20 points a game, just the inconsistencies on offense. I would say the lack of an identity. That's not going to be a problem with Jamarcus Shepard. And you talk about, I think more than anything, Chris, the fan, and I've said this a couple times, Oregon State fans spoke this season with not having their rear ends in seats, in lack for lack of better terms, right? You looked at Reser Stadium throughout the 7 games this year, the crowds just weren't there, and I think the exciting thing about Jamarcus Shepard is he's going to bring in, an offensive system that's probably going to be fast paced, probably going to be a little bit more passing concepts than we've seen. I think he'll still have a strong run game, but I do expect more of a passing attack with the Beavs, considering his background as a receivers coach and the success they've had at Alabama, the success he had with McMillan, Polk, and Odunze at Washington, and even going back to success with receivers at Purdue. So I do think, the excitement on offense is probably going to be what ultimately brings the, fan excitement back to the program, because there were some times this year when it like, for instance, this Washington State game in the finale, Chris, just this last weekend, I think sums it up perfectly. For about a half of football, I think Oregon State's defense kept him in the game. but they just couldn't score. They just couldn't string together those drives, and that's really kind of been a microcosm, of the season. So I'm excited for a coach to come in with a dynamic offensive game plan, and I think it's going to make Beaver football exciting.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how good the defense is. If the offense is going three and out and not moving the ball, and next thing you know, time of possession is in the other team's favor, and your
Hmm.
your defense will get fatigued really quick. And so you need an offense to move the ball. And I always say this whenever I have you on that I never like to make a comparison to Oregon. It's just always easy because I'm the duck honk over here. But you mentioned, the offenses like he was at Washington State for a brief time. It was just a year, so you get some experience with Mike Leach. Goes to Washington, has been with Kalen DeBoer for a few years now, and Kalen DeBoer, I have argued for some time, is one of, if not the best X's and O's in-game coach that I've ever seen. I love watching him coach a football team. And then there was a brief overlap there at Western Kentucky when Willie Taggart was head coach. And I'm on the
Hmm.
island as a Duck fan because there's a lot of Duck fans who don't like Willie Taggart because of the way he left in Florida State and all that. But I'm the alone on the island that I think Willie Taggart changed that program because he came in and the first thing he did was he didn't treat Oregon like Oregon. Like, oh, it's hard to recruit to Eugene or it's hard to recruit to the Pacific Northwest. He's like, no, we're going to do it the way I want to do it. I don't care where we're at. And he changed the approach. And so I'm kind of hoping maybe Jamarcus Shepard maybe took that from him and some of these other guys and learns that too, because I think the worst thing you can do is go in and say, yeah, it's hard to recruit to Corvallis. No, because if you say it's hard to recruit to Corvallis, it is because you've made it so. But if you have that mindset that we're going to make something great, you can make something great. So I would hope that he's the coach that can do that.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, along the same ways, Chris, it's almost like we could bring up, like the free agents to Portland and the Trailblazers, kind of an argument too. If you say you can't get free agents, so on and so forth, right? But
Yeah, absolutely. And then for some reason, Brendan, players come and play in Portland. They're like, "Oh yeah, that Portland place is pretty cool." And then they
right?
keep their they keep
No,
their houses here in the off season and they never leave.
right. No, I totally agree with you. I mean, I think it does take us, and we've seen this, right? And I've seen this play out. I'm only 30, or almost 30 years old, but I've seen this play out over my life with a couple coaches that didn't hit. Where if you don't know how to have a plan to win in Corvallis and stick to that plan and know how to sell the place, know how to sell, what Oregon State is about, I think it can be a struggle. And I think you can kind of tie some of those things, to Gary Anderson and Trent Bray to an extent. And then, you kind of look, and I think Jonathan was able to, succeed in those areas before he ultimately left. Mike Riley was able to succeed in those areas. Dennis Erickson, kind of an enigma with how he was able to succeed. But, I think it's just one of those things where he's going to come in and I think he's going to have like a why not us, why not now kind of approach, right? Like if he's coming from Alabama, right, there might be other coaches that want to join him, not just from Alabama, but going back to what I mentioned to you earlier, I love his connections across coaching staffs. Like you mentioned Willie Taggart. I think as far as being an ace recruiter and coming into his coaching career first with Willie Taggart, I love that connection for where we are in college football now. I think then, as you mentioned, Kalen DeBoer, awesome X's and O's guy. I think Brian or Jeff Brom at then Purdue, now Louisville has been one of the better offensive minds in college football too. So I like where he's been, and yeah, I think more than anything, it's not like respectfully, Chris, even like your Dennis Erickson, right, where you're like, hey, Oregon State hasn't made a bowl game in 20 some odd years. We're trying to, break horrible history. Like I just mentioned you can literally look back and Jamarcus Shepard probably is like, hey, I remember when I came to Corvallis when we played y'all back in 2023 and we beat you by 2 and you guys gave us everything we could handle. And I think he's like, why can't we get back to that? So I think that's kind of got to be the mentality, kind of like a why not us, why not now? And I think you'll see a lot of Oregon State players rally. I think he'll be able to keep some players on the roster he wants to keep. I think he'll bring in some new players as well. But I do think that he's just a good fit for Oregon State at this particular moment.
Hey, not to mention, maybe it flies under the radar, but he played college ball at DePauw University in Greencastle, Indiana, a city whose population is less than the student body of Corvallis. And I
Wow.
only bring that up because Corvallis is a small town, right? And you kind of have that idea. He knows what it means to be the big show in the small place and what it can mean to a community who can rally around that program. So that's big time. I mean, he played in a stadium whose capacity is 3,000. That's smaller than Hillsborough Stadium for all you guys.
Yeah,
That know
no,
how
I,
big that
I,
is.
I obviously knew he played at DePaul and has, I believe one of their all-time special teams return records. So that's obviously great for Oregon State. This is a special teams guy too, and someone who can help right the ship on special teams. But yeah, I agree. I think you kind of look at his varying background and where he's been, the coaches he's worked under. I like that he also has, to zero in a little bit of West Coast experience too, being a Midwest native. The couple years at Washington, the year at Washington State, I think that's key, right? Because if maybe he didn't have that experience on the West Coast, maybe it'd be slightly different. But I really like that he has made that connection and has some inroads already on the West Coast. And really, I think Oregon State's recruiting footprint, Chris, has the chance to really increase. I mean, the Beavers typically aren't grabbing a whole lot of guys out of the Midwest, out of the kind of South, and more so, they'll get a guy from Florida occasionally, maybe
Mhm.
some Texas guys. But I'm curious to see kind of how the recruiting footprint expands because Shepherd has deep connections across a lot of different spots. So I'll be curious to see that too.
Yeah, and I'll just say, like, again, from the outside looking into how you're reacting and fans are reacting, I think it's cool because Jonathan Smith, there was a lot of excitement because it was the prodigal son's coming home, right? Like, here he comes, he's coming back. We got our guy. And then when Bray fills in, like, okay, this is downtime. There wasn't a ton of excitement because there was so much
Hmm.
fluctuation with Smith. And the first thing I've noticed with this hire and the videos and the social media is like there's that a little bit of energy back in the fan base. And that goes a long way because if you fill up Reeser Stadium, and this is what fans forget too, and you need to get behind them, you fill up Reeser Stadium because when that commit comes to a visit for a game next year against Colorado State or whatever, there's a big difference between only the student body showing up and 10,000 people in Reeser versus 35,000 sold out rockin'. That makes a difference. So hopefully he can bring that energy because that helps a ton in the on field performance and that recruiting trail that you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. And just to go back, I mean, it wasn't too long ago when I think it was 2023 when you could look back over like the last three seasons. I think like 2021 to 2023, where like Oregon State lost at home like two times, and one was to Washington, as we just mentioned, and one was to Caleb Williams, right? So it's like it wasn't even that long ago that Oregon State had a raucous Reeser, and I even go back to the 2022 Civil War between or where Oregon State had, a half a stadium, and it was still incredibly loud in that game. So, yeah, there's certainly a lot that I think he can build towards, and I think you kind of can just see the excitement on social media. Obviously, there's never a hire unless it's Nick Saban that's going to please everybody. But I must say, the big majority of Beaver fans on social media and even on our message boards at beaversedge.com could definitely sign up. I got to do a shameless plug, Chris. You can join Cyber Monday, 50% off at beaversedge.com. It's an awesome deal. But I think the consensus has been very good so far. So we'll obviously see when we kind of see what his staff looks like, the player movement this offseason. But I think there's lots of excitement. I think that's exactly what the Beavers needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Brendan Slaughter joining us. Hey, Brendan, thank you for taking the time. I might reach out Thursday, see maybe get your feelings on the post press conference, see if he aces that thing or not. And yeah, if I just want to know if I get a chance to talk to him. I just want to know what's it like when you get that call. Someone wants you to be a head coach. You've never
Mm,
been it before. Pretty cool that he gets to do that at
yeah.
Oregon State, and the energy is back once again. Brendan Slaughter, beaversedge.com. Cyber Monday, 50% off. Is that what you told me? Do it.
We got an awesome deal going right now. You can appreciate it, come and take advantage today.
All right, man. Hey, thanks for the time. We'll talk to you soon, Brendan.
Appreciate it, Chris.
That is Brendan Slaughter. Again, you guys know him very well over here. Our super producer. He hosts the Blazers wrap up show weekly here on Rip City Radio and does some great coverage there of Oregon State at beaversedge.com. So if you're a Beaver fan and you haven't already, absolutely take advantage of Cyber Monday. Subscribe over there, and you'll get all the latest from the press conference tomorrow, airing live on Rip City Radio tomorrow at noon. Don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick break, but plenty more sports talk coming up on the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. Welcome back into the UFC Drive. Chris Burkhardt here with you, filling in for Chad Doing today. You can follow me on social at Chris J. Burkhardt. You can also join the conversation with us today. Just grab your phone, text 88528. Hit us up on the River City Radio text line. You can also go to youtube.com and join the chat there as well. Have a little fun as we continue to talk sports ball. It was a active weekend, and as you heard from Brendan there, pretty busy over there at Beaver's Edge. Big news with the signing of Jamarcus Shepard as the new head coach of your Oregon State Beavers. A little bit of energy, a little bit of buzz back in Corvallis. So gonna be eager to see what he says tomorrow at the press conference, and who he hires, who he brings on. Those hires are just as important at as the head coaching one, and they can go a long way in setting you up for success. And I mentioned Willie Taggart at Oregon. I mean, he brings in a great staff of recruiters, and then he leaves, but that left you with Mario Cristobal, and Mario Cristobal continued to build on the recruiting footprint that he had laid down, changed how Oregon recruited. He left, and the Ducks were able to go out and get Dan Lanning, and the rest is history. So I hope that Jamarcus Shepard can kind of turn things around at Oregon State. And I'm not joking. Like, I fully believe that that team can go into the new look Pac-12 and put it together and win 8 games a year and be in contention for that G5 playoff spot. Now, not every year. Now, they're not going to look at this thing and go, okay, well, we're a 10-win team guaranteed every single year. Like, that's just not going to happen. But you look at the teams they have to play next year, and with good coaching and a good game plan and then some good recruiting, they're going to be in a good spot, and they're going to be able to beat teams like a Colorado State. Hopefully, they're bringing in a new coach as well. So, they're thinking the same thing. They're thinking, this new look Pac-12, there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to put this together and go win, 8-10 ball games playing Oregon State and, Washington State and Fresno States and San Jose States, right? But Beavers are thinking the exact same thing. And I would argue that maybe a little bit better than Colorado State. Colorado State is, an interesting program, to say the least. But so is Oregon State. I mean, what are we even talking about here? But like Brendan said, 2 years ago with Jonathan Smith at the helm, I mean, they were almost a top 10 team. They were battling for spots in the postseason with the best of them. And you can do that again. You just got to play your cards right. I think the biggest thing for Coach Shepard is you got to come in with a plan. You can't come in and go, okay, we're going to improv this bad boy. I'm going to rely on what I know, but we're gonna improv and see what happens. When Corvallis Road tells us to turn left, we're going to turn left. And no, you got to come in with the Jonathan Smith-esque big red binder of a plan and follow it. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to recruit. This is how we're going to play offense. This is how we're going to play defense. This is the type of athlete we want. Does he want to build his team on power up front, or does he want to build his team on speed on the outside? So many differing abilities and ways to approach how you recruit. Like, it's all about the plan, though. How do you want this team to look? And then stamp it with your identity. I think that's the unfortunate part about Trent Bray. He was thrown into the fire under terrible circumstances, right? And he just never really stamped it with his, this is what a Trent Bray football team looks like. A Trent Bray football team wasn't a 2-10 football team. He's smart enough to coach that team. Maybe he's just a better defensive coordinator than a head coach. Maybe he just didn't have the plan. Hopefully, Jamarcus Shepard has the plan. And Oregon State is better for it, because I know I'm the Duck homer, and I come by it honestly. University of Oregon grad, grew up my entire life a Duck fan, but I'm not the type that wants to see Oregon State be embarrassed every week. I like when it comes to Civil War time and Oregon State's good and Oregon is good and you get yourself a good football game. Granted, I want Oregon to win every single one, but I like when the game is competitive and the game is fun. I mean, nobody, whether you're a Beaver fan, even though you lost that game, whether you're a Beaver fan or Oregon fan, you won't forget the Civil War for the Roses. Jeremiah Mazzoli, the run on 4th down. Like, that game was awesome, knowing winner of that game went to the granddaddy of them all. I'm going to bring that prestige back a little bit as these teams continue to try to schedule the game in the future, and I hope it stays for a very long time, and I hope it's not just a one-sided affair. If it's one-sided in Duck victories, I'll take that. But I just don't want it to be one-sided blowouts and stuff like that. I like good football in this state. So shout out to Oregon State. A shout out to Jamarcus Shepard, who will be introduced tomorrow at Oregon State. Live press conference will be carried here on Rip City Radio starting at noon. All right, we're going to take a quick little break here. 1 hour left in the Rip City Drive here on your home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. It is 5 o'clock somewhere. That somewhere is right here in Rip City, where we are enjoying some sports talk today on the Rip City Drive. First off, over the weekend, it was a fun night if you were an Oregon Duck fan, as the Ducks went to Husky Stadium and beat their rival, the Huskies, 26-14. The win, solidifying their spot as a college football playoff team. The only thing left now is to see what happens in the championship games, to see where the chips fall and what seed they will get. As for the Beavers, they lost to the Washington State Cougars, but it was still a good weekend because news broke that they hired Jamarcus Shepard as their new head coach. He comes from Alabama, where he's been the wide receiver coach for Kalen DeBoer, both there and at Washington. Also, other coaching news: Lane Kiffin out at Ole Miss. He decides to take the LSU job, leaving the Rebels behind. Hour 3 of the drive starts now. Welcome back into the Rip City Drive. Chris Burkhardt here with you, filling in for Chad Doing today. If you want to join the conversation, you can hit me up. 503-248-0620 is the telephone number. And of course, you can also go and hit us up on the text line. 88528 is the telephone number. And during the break, I was perusing the interwebs and, interestingly enough, found a little breaking news. Of course, we had Joel Gunderson on earlier in the day, and we were talking about the head coaching openings and the movements, and how Oregon has two coordinators, offensive coordinator Will Stein and defensive coordinator Tosh Lapoy, who are getting a lot of love. Lapoy connected to the Cal job, that is his alma mater. He played, obviously, as a Golden Bear in the early 2000s, and as soon as that job opened, when Wilcox was let go, it was highly rumored that he would have some interest, and the school would have some interest back. Haven't seen a ton of reports yet, but it seems to be a poorly kept secret that there's mutual interest there. There was also the kind of some reporting that there may be interest between Kentucky and offensive coordinator Will Stein. Will Stein did play at Louisville, which is in Kentucky. He is born and raised in Kentucky, Kentucky native. Now, that is a rival of the school he went to, but still, it would be a chance to go home and be in the SEC and be a head coach. And every coach who's a coordinator wants to be a head coach at some point. Well, Pete Thamel has tweeted out about an hour ago that sources say that Oregon OC Will Stein is the target to be the next coach at Kentucky, and that the two sides are working towards a deal. Like I said, he's a Kentucky native who has emerged as one of the country's top offensive coordinators and play callers. Pete later added that per a source, Stein is expected to call Oregon's offense throughout the college football playoff. He'll juggle both jobs until the Oregon season ends. So it sounds like Will Stein is leaving the University of Oregon and will be heading to his home state of Kentucky, taking over for Mark Stoops, who was let go from the Wildcats. So it's tough if you're Oregon. Now you got to go back to the drawing board a little bit. But as I've mentioned before, the great head coaches in this game have great coaching trees. And this is a good thing. If you're Dan Lanning, it means you're making good hires for your coordinators, and they're going on and they're getting their chance. I mean, you look at what Kenny Dillingham has done at Arizona State. He's been great for him. Yeah, they lost Arizona and whatnot, but still, it is what it is. They made the push to the playoff last year behind Cam and Sam Levitt, and things were going good, and he's been great. He was a great offensive coordinator for Oregon. He got his chance. Will Stein's been a good offensive coordinator for Oregon, and it looks like he's getting his chance with Kentucky. Tosh Lapoy, I think, has been one of the best defense coordinators this Ducks team's had in a long time. Like, I like Nick Aliotti, but this guy's defense can be next level when he wants it to be. and now he's going to get some love too. There was reports that there was interest between Lapoy and Oregon State University. Now, obviously, that didn't end up coming through because they hired Jamarcus Shepard. But Lapoy, obviously, as we've said before, a former Cal player, ties to that university. Got to be a lot of mutual interest there, and I'm sure he's been talking. So we'll see what happens, and if Dan Lanning needs to go find another defensive coordinator as well as an offensive coordinator. Now, I joked, but you could open this up and bring Chip Kelly in as your offensive coordinator, and if Lapoy leaves, you could bring Wilcox in as your defensive coordinator. I think he did pretty good at Washington. He knew what he was doing at Cal. The Cal just kind of got in its own way, unfortunately. But we'll see what Dan Lanning does. Those are going to be two big hires. You got young quarterbacks that you need to develop, a great wide receiver room when they're healthy. The running backs are phenomenal. So the OC job is going to be one that I think a lot of people are going to be after. And then that defense has been lights out this year. They played incredibly well. And I think that's a spot that a lot of defensive coordinators are going to want to go play as well. The only thing you got to watch here, the interesting part about this is the recruiting cycle, right? Because early National Signing Day is, I believe, Wednesday. And so if you are having coaches leave just in time to make those flips and get players, you're going to flip from Oregon to Kentucky. It might just happen. Like you're starting to see people flip from Penn State to Virginia Tech because of James Franklin. So you're going to see maybe a couple flips here, see how important Will Stein has been to the recruiting for the Oregon Ducks. And of course, you go into 24/7 trying to look at some recruiting rankings, and right there, Kentucky expected to hire Oregon offensive coordinator Will Stein. So there you go. That's the latest on the head coaching searches around the league, and it has been pretty wild, quite honestly, the way that the coaching carousel has played out. There's been a lot of movement in a short amount of time. I mean, Jonathan Smith was outed at Michigan State, and that was quickly flipped to Pat Fitzgerald taking that job. Chesney's out at James Madison taking the job at UCLA. Tulane's coach going to Florida. Like there's just a lot of movement going on around the coaching carousel world. And now Will Stein is just part of that. I'm again eager to see what happens with Dan Lanning. Can he pick up those positions and make them great, make them great moving forward? Continue to build off what Coach Dillingham and Coach Stein did, and then look at guys like Bryson Beaver is one 4-star quarterback out of California, big highly touted recruit for the Ducks, number 15 at his position, number 32 overall in the state of California. Does he flip? I mean, that's a big get for a quarterback, a guy that they liked, a guy Will Stein liked. And now, again, Will Stein has taken a job elsewhere. So watching what happens on the recruiting trail over the next few days is going to be really interesting. I have all the faith in the world that Dan Lanning hires the right person, though. It's just who is that person? Obviously, I wasn't ready for this news to break right now. I haven't done the research. I haven't gone through all the possibilities of who could sign where and who's here and who's there and who's the hot name. All I know is that Will Stein looks to be heading to Kentucky. If that's the case, we'll see what happens. I like that he's coaching, though, still sticking his rest of the way through. Obviously, Lane Kiffin wanted to do that, but they said, no way, Jose, get out of here. You're an LSU guy now. I like these coaches. I also think it's going to be interesting what happens because it sounds like there's a lot behind the rumor of Kalani Sitake to Penn State. That one's starting to pick up some steam. I hope he doesn't leave. I think he's perfect for BYU. I love Kalani Sitake, but also he looked pretty good with the Nittany Lions. If you want to join the conversation, 503-248-0620 is the telephone number. You can also text us at 88528, and we'll head out to Wilsonville right now where Don wants to talk about if Alabama loses the SEC championship game. Don, welcome to the the Rip City Drive, excuse me. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I've been following you for a while since Chad has been, having you on his show for a long time here and there. I think you're doing pretty good at sports and stuff like that and how you explain things. Yeah, no one's talked about really if Georgia really slams the door on Alabama and if they're going to have 3 losses. And do they deserve to stay in the college playoffs? Or can Texas jump them? Or, BYU, if BYU, wins that,
Yeah, no, absolutely, Don. And thanks for the call and thanks for the question. And before I get to the answer for you, thanks for the compliment there. I tried to do my best to fill in for Chad, but Chad doing, man, he's the top of the mountain over here. He knows what he's doing, and I'm glad that you guys listen and enjoy it. Now, your question. Let's dive into this for a second, man. You're talking about Alabama if they lose that game. I think, quite frankly, if they lose that game, they're definitely probably going to be on the outside looking in because there's so many variables right now, Don. Let's look at the AP rankings. Now, the AP rankings are not the end all be all. Obviously, the college football playoff rankings have a lot to do with everything that happens here in this setting. But the latest AP rankings, you have Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, and Oregon as your top four. If Georgia wins, they're going to be locked in the top four. I don't think the loser of Ohio State, Indiana falls out of the top four. I mean, undefeated all year long, you lose in the championship game, you're probably going to fall 2 spots. So if Indiana loses that game, I think they're probably number 3. What you got to watch here is Texas Tech BYU, because if Texas Tech loses to BYU, they're number 5 right now. I don't think they fall all the way out of the 10. Like that makes them an 11-2 team, played in the championship game, lost to a good BYU team. And then BYU would stand to, nope, they're locked in. That changes everything. Alabama, they lose to Georgia in this scenario. They fall to 10-3. And you have Miami, who's not playing in their conference championship game, who stands to jump. And you have the fact that what if Duke wins? I mean, you're getting a 7-3 team into the playoff, which is crazy. And you have Texas right there at 9-3, who's in that conversation as well. Vanderbilt at 10-2 is in that conversation. They absolutely walloped Tennessee. So if you have Alabama fall in 2 spots, for instance, and they're right there in the battle with Vanderbilt, who are you taking? You taking the 10-3 Bama or the 10-2 Vandy? And I think you might have a really good argument for the 10-2 Vanderbilt team. And of course, Texas is going to want to get in on this conversation. Oh, we deserve to be in there too, yada, yada, yada. But that is absolutely, it's a good question, first of all. So thanks for asking it. And yeah, what happens in that SEC championship can change everything. Because I think Alabama, quite frankly, has to win that game to be in. And if Alabama is in and they win that game, that means there's a high likelihood that Oregon ain't falling out of that top 4, and Oregon's going to get that first round bye. If you're on the side that you think Oregon needs to have the bye, then you want Texas Tech and Georgia to lose for sure. If you want Oregon, if you're a Duck fan and you want them to have the first round matchup, then you want Texas Tech to win, because that changes everything right there. They'd likely jump them. And you want Georgia to win because they solidify that final spot. But no, Don, that's a really good question. Yeah, if Alabama wins, probably in. I mean, they're in, obviously. But if Alabama loses and you have everything else that's going on in the championship matchups, the BYU, the Texas Tech, Virginia, Duke, one of those teams going to get in, what happens with Tulane and JMU, all those things, yeah, there's absolutely that conversation of, oh my gosh. Because what's interesting is BYU. Because, like, if BYU loses, then teams like Miami, they're going to get in. But if BYU wins, I don't see Texas Tech falling all the way out. So you probably get both those Big 12 teams. And then you start, oh, man, who's getting that 12? That becomes a conversation. So, yeah, I think there's a real good chance that Alabama loses that game and does not get in. Great question. And I hope that that answered it for you. And once again, thanks for the compliment. All right, we're going to take a quick little break here. When we come back, plenty of more football talk, sports talk. I would talk Blazers, but that's what Courtside's for, because I got Courtside Monday coming at you from 6 to 7. 4 hours of unfiltered Burkhardt today, only on your home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio, 620. Welcome back into the Rip City Drive. Chris Chad doing today. If you want to join the conversation, you can hit me up on social media. Chris J. Burkhardt is the name. You can also dial in 503-248-0620 or hit us up on the brand new Rip City Radio text line. Just text 88528 and we'll get your comments on there. Lots of news going around. I appreciate that call by Don. I thought that was a good point. I think we talked about it a little bit at the very beginning of the show, but it's always good to rebound and come back around full circle and talk about those things again, because yeah, there's a lot on the line this weekend as it pertains to the college football playoff with those championship games and everything lining up, and you're going to see some moving. It's going to happen. Like I said, I don't think the loser of the Big Ten championship game falls out of the top four. I really don't. You're undefeated regular season. I think you're in. If you were third or fourth, that's going to change a little bit. But the fact that they're going 1-2, I just don't see them falling out. I do think that if, again, Georgia wins, they're locked into that top three. Alabama wins, they're not jumping all the way up. Georgia's probably is going to fall out. That's going to probably jump Oregon into solidified into the top four. And then the next debate would be what happens with Texas Tech, because they're probably boom, they're in. So BYU wins, that changes everything, because I just don't think Texas Tech falls all the way out of contention. You still got the SEC gauntlet of teams. Like there is so much here, and of course I was going off of the latest AP rankings, not the college football ones, because we have the college football playoff rankings from last week. Haven't seen updated ones yet, so that's where I'm at, and I think it's going to be such a crucial championship week, because it could change absolutely everything. Absolutely everything. Taking a look at ESPN real quick, this gives us an idea. They predicted what it would look like. So this is what ESPN predicts. Whoa, don't scroll too fast. Scroll too fast. They predict Ohio State. They predict Indiana. Would be the latest rankings going into championship week. They would predict Indiana. Then they predict Georgia. Yeah, they predict Texas Tech goes in there at number 4. Oregon is at number 5. A&M at 6. Ole Miss at 7. Oklahoma at 8. Notre Dame at 9. Alabama at 10. BYU at 11. And Miami at 12. That's what their predictions are. So we'll see where that plans out. And then, of course, you got what happens with the G5 teams, because that's going to change. The highest ranked G5 team gets in. So is that going to be Tulane if they take care of business? I know James Madison's in that conversation as well. That changes up everything. And so if this scenario plays out, if Texas Tech wins and Georgia wins, again, I don't think Indiana falls out of that top 4. So Oregon's probably going to sit there right at number 5. But if either Georgia or Texas Tech takes that loss, then if you're a Duck fan, you got good hopes of getting that bye week, which I want to go back to what Joel said earlier about the chance to get healthy. I think that's crucial. It's big time. And last year, you had to go against the buzzsaw that was Ohio State. This year, bracket plays out a little bit different. I think teams are pretty balanced. You stand a good chance, but getting healthy in time would be absolutely huge. So that bye week is something I think you probably do want if you're an Oregon fan. You have Texas A&M right there at number 6 at 11-1. So if Alabama beats Georgia, I don't think Alabama's jumping Texas Tech or even Ole Miss. Maybe they do, but there's so many variables, man. So many variables. This is why we wanted this. We wanted the playoff. We wanted the chance to look this thing dead in the eye, break it down, and see what was going to happen, and go, oh man, this is really cool. This could happen. Scenario here, this, that, boom, boom, boom. Now BYU wins. That changes things up, right? Because I love Kalani Sitake, love what BYU does. But if they're locked in, does Texas Tech fall out? What does that do? Bama loses. They're probably definitely out. Miami's right on the cusp, because everything changes this weekend. So again, I want to shout out to Don for the call. Mine was in the right place. It was a good conversation to have, because boy howdy, it could change absolutely everything about what you know about the CFP once we head into championship time. Championship games play out, and then we sit here on the edge of our seat wondering what the final rankings look like And I'll tell you what, we thought this was going to get rid of the debate, but there's going to be a good chance, very good chance that a deserving team is not in the playoff. And that's the nature of the beast. The thing is, you're going to have at least 11 teams because I know this whole G5 thing is throwing a wrench in it. And you're going to have at least 11 teams who are deserving. Oh, Virginia and Duke's not deserving? Hey, they won the tiebreaker. They earned the right to get in their conference championship game. I know Duke is only 7-5, but they won the tiebreaker. You had what, 4 teams, 5 teams there in the ACC at 6-2. They had to go through all their tie-breaking scenarios. Duke won the tiebreaker. They're in. Miami, on paper, is the best team in that conference. Miami, paper does not win championships. Sorry. Fact. Do I want to see Miami in the college football playoff? Yeah. I want a chance of seeing Miami taking on the Ducks just because that's fun. But if you don't lose a game and you take care of business in the conference, you're in there. So that's why that's here. You got to win your games. This is great. This is college football. This is NFL football, right? You got to win your divisions and you got to win your games. We have seen times before where, oh my gosh, this division was stacked. A deserving team was left out because if they played in the AFC South, not the NFC South, they'd be a playoff team. Well, guess what? If you played in the Big Ten and not the SEC, you might be a playoff team. That's just how the cookie crumbles. And so Miami didn't take care of business. They lost 2 games they should have won. And this happened. They basically made it happen. They let it happen. Take care of business. But that's just my point. If Duke wins, they're deserving. They won they earned a chance to get into their conference championship, and then they won it. The G5 thing, no. Oh, you're ranked 25, but you're the highest ranked G5 team you're in. That's a little bit suspect to me. I don't know if I like that. But still, that's the rules. So you take it, you accept it. Best thing and the biggest thing I know is I'm a Duck fan, and the Ducks got locked in by getting that big dub over Washington. They needed that. Speaking of wins, looking at football scores right now, it is 9:07 left in the first. Earmuffs, Shacker, unless you're watching Monday Night Football live. The Patriots have a 3-0 lead over the New York Giants. Seeing what will go there. The 2-10 Giants looking for an upset over the 10-2 Patriots. Drake May playing well. The Patriots 10-2. Gosh, thought Tom Brady left and Bill Belichick left and the dynasty was going to run with it. And all of a sudden, here they are putting together wins and playing good ball. It's pretty crazy. And if you're just joining us too, it looks like Will Stein, your offensive coordinator down there at the University of Oregon, is leaving, going to Kentucky, going to take that open job. And also reports coming in now that the talks around Kalani Sitake are really heating up. Sources telling ESPN that Kalani Sitake is the focus for Penn State in their coaching search. And I've told you guys this, if you pay attention to me, I love Kalani Sitake. I love Kalani Sitake. In the 1 year there at Oregon State where he was defensive coordinator, getting a chance to talk to him at practices and stuff, you just knew that you were talking to a football mind. A football mind. He knew what he was doing, and he was so gracious with his time and his answers. I just loved him, and he's done great at BYU. BYU is a place that, obviously, with being a religious school and the hardship that it is to get recruits there because of all the implications and the prereqs that go with it, that's hard. I mean, sometimes you're recruiting players who are going on mission, so you're not even going to see them for 4 or 5 years, depending on what's going on. So it's a hard place to win, and all he's done is won. He's turned it around. So you give him a chance at Penn State, he'd be a great hire. The only thing is, I don't really want him to leave BYU. I think he's a great coach for it, former BYU player, knows the community, knows what it means to win there, knows what it takes to recruit there as he's done. And I think he's a great coach for it. But if he gets a chance at Penn State, I'm all for it because Kalani Sitake is an easy dude to root for. He's an easy guy to root for. So we'll see what happens there. But it does sound like they're zeroing in, and that very well could be the hire, is Kalani Sitake. Now, is he infinitely better than James Franklin? We shall see. I think James Franklin's a good coach. I don't think James Franklin deserved to be fired. I think Penn State is a weird university that lives off the ghost of Joe Pa and still thinks that it's 1985 or whatever year it was when they won 2 championships in a year when you weren't even playing actual championship games. You just got to finish at the top of the poll. Oh, Penn State, we did. Yeah, it's been 30 years, guys, 40 years. I was born in 86. I just turned 39. That's how long ago it was. But you're living off that. And then James Franklin gets left out in the cold. He gets fired. He was just Joe Pa without the championships. The run of consistency was there. I always hate the whole like, oh well, he has a losing record against top 25 teams. Okay, well, he's playing top 25 teams. He's not playing weak conference or weak schedules. He's playing good teams, and sometimes you're going to lose those games. It's just part of the deal. It's going to happen. I think he's a killer hire at Virginia Tech. Now you have resources. That place likes to win. They're going to give you money. You're already getting recruits to flip. You're getting the people to buy in, and you don't have the pressure that Penn State puts on you. I think that's a win-win situation. So I think James Franklin's a home run hire there. And if they fill that spot with Kalani Sitake, that's a pretty good job by Penn State, if we're being completely honest. Earmuffs Michael Shacker, because we got another update out of Monday Night Football. How about that? A 94-yard kickoff return? Or is that a punt return? Yeah, big time score. New England takes a 10-0 lead. Now you can listen.
I care more about the Manning cast. Just don't spoil alert who the guests are this week.
I only catch the Manning cast on the highlight. Those guys are wonderful. Have you watched that? Have you watched that Chad Powers show inspired by Eli Manning's Chad
I love
Powers
that show. I hope it gets renewed because I think they only have like one season's worth of story to tell. So that's why only a few games were
Right.
involved. Because it's 5 episodes, 6 episodes. It's just like watching a movie.
Oh, it's gonna be like there was a show I liked based off a Stephen King book. James Franco. It was 11/22/63. It was a miniseries. Just one season, had like 8 episodes. It was basically like a long movie, like they did with like It when It originally came out, and the Stephen King original version, not the redone version. Like when it came out, it's like, oh, the miniseries, The Langoliers was another one. Big shout out to that one. But that was I like it. That's what they need to do with Chad Powers. Like it has like one season left. You can't go 8 seasons in it. What is he going to do? Yeah, he's going to keep the secret running so long that he gets drafted out of Georgia State, where they're like catfish or whatever.
You
Like
need like a bowl game or a conference championship game to like have like the finale.
Yeah.
I didn't like how it. I need more. I need more.
I
Chad
did not
Powers.
like how the season ended because I totally tuned in the next Tuesday or whatever, looking for the next episode. I'm like, there's no new episode. What the heck? And I'm like, that was the season finale? Like, they have to renew it. Otherwise, it's the worst cliffhanger of all time. Like, you guys got to watch it. It's one of those shows that, like, it's not great. Like, I'm not writing home about how good it is, but it's definitely worth watching. We, as producers, need to go back through it and pull all of the cheesy Chad references for drops on the radio show. Chad Powers.
Well, you couldn't play football because of the Wolves.
What?
Yeah.
I loved it. Like it was so funny though. Like after the water balloon, he said, "Are you crying?" The water started coming out of his cheek. Like it's funny. And what that Glenn Powell does a good job. It's a good show. Go watch it. We need to pull all those Chad references. I did pull when like Eli Manning did the original one. I had a couple drops on the Chad. like you gotta have some fun with it. But shout out to the Mannings and the Manning cast, inspiring fun TV on Disney Plus. Feeding the machine. Good job. Good job. Now, back to football, though. Yeah, that college football playoff, it's something else. I think it's only you got to go where the money is. That's what they're doing. That's why this thing started as the BCS, and then it finally went to 4 teams, and 4 teams lasted about a blink of the eye, and boom, now we're at a 12 team. I think it's only a matter of time before you're at least 16 or a 16 team, and maybe even more because you're going to have the money, right? If Texas and Miami and those type of teams get left out, oh, we're right there. We need to be in the playoff. And then eventually, maybe you do expand it. I do think if you get to a spot where it's a 16 team, okay, 2 teams, 8 seeds each side, play for a championship. 20 could work if you do the bye weeks or whatnot, and people play like 24, however many teams you need for that. But the point is, like, expansion's going to happen. Because you're going to have too many of these teams. Oh, we deserve to be in. We played so well. You're gonna punish us for losing to Ohio State. No, we're not punishing you for losing to Ohio State. We would have rewarded you if you won. Like you got to win your games. That's plain and simple. In fact, I think you end up getting to a point where you want to start scheduling those games more often, so you can look someone in the eye and be like, "Oh no, look at our loss. It's to Ohio State. Like that's a good loss. You know, that's important. It's like Oregon. People want to dog Oregon for their one loss. Oh, they lost at home. Yeah, it was to Indiana, who's currently 12-0, undefeated. They're a good team. Texas was number one. They went to the shoe. They took the risk. It was a low-scoring game. I get that. But since then, you know, they shouldn't have lost to Florida. 29-21. At Florida, they lost. When they played Georgia, they lost. And it wasn't a close game. It's 35-10. So you got to take care of business. Now, so they're not, when you talk about, our schedule, you weren't punished because you lost to Ohio State. You weren't punished because you lost to Georgia. You're sitting there looking at a team that lost to Florida State, 29-21. A Florida State team that is 4-8. And they've lost some good games. LSU, Miami. But they also lost to South Florida. They lost to Kentucky. Florida lost to Kentucky, a team so bad that they just fired their head coach and grabbed Oregon's offensive coordinator. Kentucky's losses to South Carolina, lost to Tennessee, lost to Louisville. Like, come on now. Just got to win your games. Oh, we deserve to be in. The current landscape says no because you lost to Florida. Win your games. Take care of business. That's what Oregon did. They go into Husky Stadium. They lose that game. They had a 60% chance of getting in. And if they would have been left out, they would have argued. Would have been a justified argument, but I would have been like, win. And having 2 losses is a little bit different than having 3. In this landscape, big time. Oh, they lost to an unranked Washington team. Oh, win and you're in. Take care of business. Goes for everybody. All right, we're going to take a break here, final break of the show. And then got Courtside Monday. I still got an hour and a half of this bad boy. Plenty of Blazer talk. That's why you haven't heard Blazer talk on this show today. So I got plenty of it coming up. And Tori Jones will join us on the show from Blazers Uprise. So you're going to want to tune in. Plenty more coming up here on your home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. Welcome back into the Rip City Drive. Chris Burkhardt here with you, filling in for Chad Doing today. If you want to join the conversation, Chris J. Burkhardt is the name on social media. You can also dial the phone line 503-248-0620. And of course, you can go to the new fancy Rip City Radio text line. Just text 88528, where we did get a texter calling out Dawn, who asked the SEC question. He said, Dawn's only made one mistake. He said you were good. No, you're great. That's a lie. Thank you for the compliment, but you're lying. You're lying. I'm a capable fill-in for Chad Doing. Also, I am really great, and I really want to speak into existence that the Rip City Drive with Chad and Chris needs to exist. Okay, no shame in my game. I'm trying, friends. I'm trying. I filled in, or I didn't fill in. I joined Chad a couple weeks ago in there, and he did. He didn't say, "You're welcome back to the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing." He's like, "Oh, welcome back to the Rip City Drive with Chad and Chris." And after the show, I'm like, "You do know that sounded pretty good, right? Like that sounded really good. That's a good name. It rolls off the tongue. Like I'll even let your name be first on the marquee, Rip City Drive with Chad and Chris. You can be like 16-point font, and I'll be 17-point font. I'll just that little difference." And when you're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm the one who makes the graphics. So, speaking of that, I got called out, Shacker, because I make the little commercial for when I stream the YouTube at Moda Center, which I have to fix, by the way, because I noticed it again the other day. One of our YouTube listeners was laughing, like, whoever made the graphic misspelled Burkhardt on the Courtside Monday graphic. So I just started laughing. I'm like, that bum, who makes the graphics? I do. I misspelled my own name on the Courtside graphic for the commercial. That's all right. It's only on YouTube. No big deal. It's not like it's the most used social media app on the planet. Well, we will survive. We will survive. But no, I'm filling in for Chad today. So once again, you can follow me on social, Chris J. Burkhardt. And I joke about it, but those compliments mean a lot. It's really awesome that you guys tune in and listen and have some fun. Now, I will be here after the show. Show's only got a few minutes left, but Courtside Monday is from 6 to 7. So I'm going to still be here talking Blazers with you. And we're going to have some guests on. We're going to talk a little fun. Keith just texted me. He's like, STFU. You know what that means. You're great, bro. He's just buttering me up because he really wants me to go record an episode of the Trailcasters podcast. Well, now that you got your RSS feed fixed and everything, I might as well just do that one of these days. Hit me up. We'll have some fun. But yeah, we're going to do that. And then tomorrow we got Blazers game day for you. That's a 2:30 start. Game tips at 4:30. And Chacker and I were talking. We decided the fifth quarter would be a great time to give away tickets because it's Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday tomorrow. So tune in for that in the fifth quarter after the game for your chance to win a pair of Blazer tickets. Also tomorrow, we've talked a lot of college football today, which is funny that Keith just texted me a compliment too, because I know he's not a football guy. So if he's listening through 2 hours of football, that's funny. But he probably just tuned in knowing Courtside Monday's starting in a little bit, and he wants to hear Blazer talk. I know that. But if you are a Beaver fan, and we had Brendan Slaughter on today with some great insight on their new hire and Jamarcus Shepard, you can listen to the podcast or go back to the YouTube stream and listen after the show. But tomorrow we'll have a special live broadcast of that press conference from noon to 1 or whenever that is done. Michael Shacker is going to be all over that. So as soon as that press conference is ready to go, you're going to hear it here on Rip City Radio. I know there's a lot of people jazzed at the fact that they got a new coach, and it's a guy that is bringing a little bit of energy, a young guy who can hopefully lead the Beavers back in a right direction. They've been rudderless, and then they had the rudder back, and then the rudder broke. Like, they weren't rudderless with Trent Bray, but the rudder was broken. They needed to fix it, right? John Smith was a great captain. He just left and went to Michigan State, where, as Dan Lanning says, the grass ain't always green. He said the grass is damn green in Eugene. Well, the grass is green in Oregon State too. Imagine what could have happened if Coach Smith just stayed there and kept building on what he had already started, got through the rough patch of no conference, and then been ready to go in the new look Pac-12 next year, all while leading his alma mater. He could have had a bronze statue ready to go. Well, might not even a bronze statue. Oregon State might have splurged and made it gold because he would have deserved it. But he left. He went to Michigan State, lasted 2 seasons. He just got canned. Michigan State's picking up Pat Fitzgerald. So a reminder that the grass is not always greener And I think maybe there's some other coaches that could take that into mind. I mean, maybe there's circumstances behind the scenes that led to it, but I mean, Lane Kiffin on the outside looking in, to me, Lane Kiffin leaving Ole Miss to go to LSU doesn't make sense to me. I mean, you're going to be a college football playoff team in Ole Miss. You're going to have a realistic chance of winning a championship. This was your first 11-win regular season in program history, your second 11-win season overall, both under Lane Kiffin. You're doing great things at this university. And you're like, yep, got to go to LSU to the next big thing. Now, I know the Tulane coach left to go to Florida. There's a big difference with going from Tulane to Florida. That's a former SEC team. That's right. Tulane was a founding member of the SEC, along with Georgia Tech. Get them back. But there's a big difference going from Tulane to Florida State, or James Madison to UCLA, where you're going from being a G5 team to playing in the Big Ten, and hopefully turning that around as what Coach Chesney did. There's a big difference in that than going from Ole Miss, which is an SEC team that you're proving can be an SEC power, where you're winning 11 games and going to the college football playoff, and jumping to LSU. Why? Because LSU has a history and the trophies and, a couple Heismans and, history. You can just be just another guy, or you can just go be the guy. I want more coaches sticking around to be the guy, which I hope Dan Lanning never leaves. Go be the guy at Oregon. Understand that you can make your place great. Now, if there's a big difference, like, oh, hey, we're going to offer you 3 times your salary or whatever. Okay, well, I might take that. That is a big difference. Of course, some people would argue there's a big difference between $9 million and $13 million, which I believe is the difference between the Ole Miss salary and the LSU salary that Lane Kiffin's getting. And to that, I would argue, you're probably right. You're probably right. And if that plays into it, sure, I understand. But man, I just like people to understand, hey, we got really something good here. Let's make it great. But you never know what goes